Hello friends, in this video we're going to look at this pair of vintage speakers that I just picked up. Got them for $7.99 at a local thrift store, $7.99 each. So I've got about $16 tied up in these. I've got the face lifted off of one of them. You can see that it has a severe problem, which is the foam surround on this speaker is disintegrated. That tends to happen over time, and those can be replaced with replacement kits you can buy on eBay and elsewhere. Turns out the replacement kit for both of these is about $15. These speakers might be worth, it's hard to tell, they're not extremely valuable. They might be worth in the $100 range in good shape. So I have some options here on what I want to do with these. Here are the things I've thought of so far. Obvious one, we could buy the foam kit for this and fix that up. Now the other speaker, I've still got the panel on it, but it has essentially the same problem. Since these degrade as a function of time, you typically get a kit that has two of them in it, because you'll need to do both. The mid-range and the tweeter look fine as is. Now I recently saw a pair of Marantz speakers at a thrift store that are more valuable, and they had a problem with the mid-range. So there are some options there. The Marantz speakers went for about $100 at the thrift store. There wasn't enough margin for me to pick them up at that price to try to resell them. Don't have a need for them myself. And you know, I may either go back and negotiate a deal. One possibility is to transplant this one into the Marantz if it's the right size. You know, and the Marantz has the same problem on both sides, so we got two transplant candidates. So aside from redoing this speaker, robbing this one as a transplant, I could possibly sell these elements as vintage speaker elements. And another idea I had was an upcycling idea, which is, imagine you take all of this stuff out, put some sort of shelves in this, maybe adjustable shelves, where somebody could buy this as a vintage speaker look, that they just set a modern speaker inside from an AV system. Like here's one I've been using in my lab setup that's in this height scale is maybe about this big. So you can imagine having an adjustable shelf where you put that on the bottom, maybe put a second speaker up here if you want to, or knickknacks or whatever, leave it open. But then with the cover on, you get this nice vintage look to go with your vintage stereo instead of this more, call it space age look that you get from the modern speaker. And one of the things to consider with this type of thing from a recycle reuse point of view is these are pretty heavy, meaning that selling them on eBay, the shipping cost is going to be a substantial part of the overall price. So by upcycling them, we can sell these individual components on eBay, you know, scrap the lower component or possibly even retrofit that and sell it separately as a you know, rebuilt speaker. And that takes most of the weight out of the shipping equation, so that, you know, let's say this speaker is worth $100 in good shape. Well, maybe you could get, you know, 30, 20 and 20 and not have shipping cost, and then upcycle the cabinet. So that's kind of what I'm leaning towards now. I haven't tried these out yet. I don't know if they work. My guess is that they do work, but they're not going to work properly without this foam around here. There's two things. One is that's part of the mechanical design of the speaker that makes this part work correctly. And another thing is, this is a sealed design. You can see a little bit of fiberglass material inside here. This cabinet box is completely enclosed, and with that foam ring here, this would be basically sealed from an acoustic point of view. The enclosed box design that this has is not commonly used anymore. Nowadays you would have probably a port hole here, and this would be a bass reflex speaker. So speakers of this size that are newer typically would be bass reflex speakers. So these may have some value as vintage speakers if they're repaired, but considering the shipping costs and the repair cost, probably not worth it. So I think from a salvage turnover point of view, I can probably do better by just stripping this out and making it into a fancy decor item that we can sell locally, on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. So next, let's look at the back to see what we're up against. So here's the name tag, Fisher XP-65 speaker system, serial number 8 ohms. We've got screw jacks that are shown here and marked plus and minus. On this one, the tag is missing and this piece is kind of blown out. We've got some damage back here. Those things could potentially be repaired, but we don't have collector's items here. And also another thing, going back to the grill on the front, in pictures I've seen they have some sort of badge that says Fisher on it somewhere on this. I don't know if that didn't show up in this model or if maybe these are replaced covers. They're certainly vintage, at least vintage looking. So a vintage hi-fi person might actually prefer the empty cabinets more, like I said, putting a modern speaker inside if they're not looking for something that's authentic and collectible. So per typical speaker construction, these are made out of particle board all the way around. The back panel is obviously particle board. This is particle board if you see it closely. It's got actually a very convincing walnut veneer on here, and I think that's another part of the value here, is just a nice looking veneer. Now we've got numerous dings and scratches. I've already done a light cleaning on these. We could fill that in with one of these marker pens. This one's the right color, and that can be successful on small areas like this. It's not the type of fix-it you would be fooled by with a magnifying glass, but as far as from a distance, you'd never notice it. So as our next test, let's go ahead and hook these up and see what they sound like. I'm going to try them out on this Sony AV receiver that I used in my last video. I found that it works fine. I don't know, if it's the highest end audiophile thing, but anyway, it's a modern enough unit that it should have good performance as a driver for these speakers. I've gone ahead and hooked up some speaker wires to the back of each with the end loose. I'm going to use the ohm meter to measure the resistance, which is going to tell me that the impedance is within range. 5 ohms resistance is about right for an 8 ohm impedance speaker. If you don't know the difference between impedance and resistance, don't worry about it. But basically an 8 ohm speaker should have less than 8 ohms of resistance, so this is about right. So that tells me I'm not going to harm my stereo system by hooking these up. Do that next. Got everything set up here with my AV receiver that I'm using as a test source. Some royalty-free YouTube music. Volume turned all the way down. Let's turn the volume up and see what it sounds like. Well, to my ear that sounds kind of tinny. Not unexpected because the woofers really aren't doing much of anything. There's a little distortion also. Let's zoom in on the woofer. Going to turn it up here. Here's a better angle where you can see what's going on with these woofers. Enough of that typical YouTube music. So I could feel the mid-range and the woofers moving on both speakers. Couldn't feel the tweeter, but you know, probably can't feel that high frequency of vibration. Probably every reason to believe those would work. I'll do a little hearing test separately, but I'm going to assume for now that they work. So what we've got at this point is speakers that basically work, that really aren't usable due to this issue, that would sound better if this foam issue were solved on both sides. Another possibility is to just replace these, but that may be part of the overall speaker design. Each speaker has slightly different parameters in the same general category, and also the replacement speakers for these new might be in the, you know, $30 range or something. So that's probably not economical from a salvage point of view. And I'm kind of heading towards my original idea of upcycling these, selling the elements, the mid-range and the tweeter element, and scrapping or possibly dissecting for a future video these woofer elements. Now another thing to do in the upcycling context is we've got lots of little nicks and scratches. This isn't going to be worth totally refinishing, but with a little careful application of my stain marker thing, those are widely available at home improvement stores. You know, I can make this better, and it'll be to the point where unless somebody's looking at it closely, they won't even notice these problems. Got a little bit of possible water damage here on the top. It's probably going to not be easy to fix in any way, short of a full refinishing. But since it's on the top, that might not bother whoever uses it. Or I might be able to just throw a little coat of walnut stain on top of this and, you know, make it better. So I'm going to stop there on this video. That concludes this part. Look for upcoming videos as I make changes in this and figure out what I'm going to do with it. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.